Welcome to Perspectives on Neurodiversity, a podcast dedicated to challenging myths and assumptions about neurodiverse life. I am your host, Christopher Scott Wyatt, speaking as the Autistic Me. Some interviews for this season were recorded before I rebranded the podcast. I continue to blog as the Autistic Me, and that name will continue to be the social media handle for the blog and this podcast. Subscribe to Perspectives on Neurodiversity on your favorite podcasting platform. I hope you enjoy and learn from our discussions. Hello, and welcome to the Autistic Me podcast. I am Christopher Scott Wyatt. Michaell Magrutsche is truly a multimedia artist, a painter, a photographer, music composer, digital artist, and author. A former Newport Beach, California Arts Commissioner, Michaell promotes the value of public art. He is also the author of 5 books and a podcast producer. Michaell, welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. Good to be here. Looking forward to this. By the way, I couldn't have said that better than you. I would have started more if I would have done the introduction, because as you know, I was at least extremely dyslexic, and I couldn't fit in anywhere and couldn't pass any education or anything.
That's what this episode is going to be about, is a different type of neurodiversity, and the idea that neurodiversity sort of goes across everybody.
Yeah.
We are all neurodiverse. That's one of the things that I don't like about the term neurotypical.
Yeah.
I haven't met a typical person.
Yeah. The normal person, right?
This infamous normal person to which we compare ourselves, I haven't met.
I haven't met either. So I don't think we are alone.
When we talk about neurodiversity, I do want to stress that brains being wired differently, that does include dyslexia, ADHD, PTSD, sensory processing, learning, what we call learning disabilities, which really should be learning differences, different ways of approaching things.
Mm-hmm.
You overcame severe dyslexia and stuttering to become a successful arts commissioner, an artist, composer. You do all these things. So let's start at the beginning. When did you realize you were dyslexic or different?
I learned very much that it was different because I had asthma and eczema and just felt horrible. I had a birth that was 36 hours. I obviously didn't want to come to this world. I was very early, I knew, I wasn't normal because I couldn't go play. I was allergic. I reacted. I was one of those kids, there's something inherently wrong with him. And I wasn't aware of that. I was aware at about 35 of it, but I wasn't aware of what I went through because my spirit just tried to survive. And I was always, what I know now is how to find myself. And that's why I say art is a human superpower with adaptability and with human discourse. I think those are 3 human superpowers: creativity and art and human discourse. What I found was what made me functioning or surviving another day was music, painting, being in the woods and creating a shed, having a disco, dance in the basement, making a dance place. And then I went from one to another that kept me feel that I'm okay being me. I was DJ, did fashion shows. This was a thread through my whole life till now, that the creativity was something that made me feel normal. Or at least, even if I had my skin itched or I had hard time to speak, I was always good in systems. I was good with humans. For example, I was speaker of the class, but I failed the class. So I was always really good in the human systems from one-to-one, but I was not good in any system where I was not limited. I wasn't a rebel either. I had tutors and tried to make it. I'm an A personality. but I just couldn't comprehend it. I cannot comprehend a lot of things of systems like money and I'm not splurging or anything. I just can't understand it, can't comprehend it. And it seems like nobody has really the answer to. Like you mentioned a couple of things before, you haven't met that normal person. So I think we all live in stereotypes and characterizations and not into humanity, that we all have a reason because we exist. We have a value because we exist. Like in nature, the elephant is not more worth than the ant. They are valuable because they exist. And what we humans totally miss is that it's all about balance. Like in nature, we are part of nature. System haven't created us, but for some reason, systems think they haven't given birth to any humans or nature, but we submit with our adaptability to their rules and their static dynamics. We are not static. Humans are not static, as you know, and not every dyslexic is the same. So we are all different. It seems like I don't even want to call it handicap because I know dyslexia has a phenomenal other side to it that you see context, for example. I see always context better than a lot of people. I mean, I found out that when I recognized that art is so powerful in my life, and I got always, I got this statistics thrown at me that 95% to 97% of worldwide artists live on the poverty level. And I said, how can that be? So much joy and pleasure and explaining what humans are, our limitlessness, the demonstration of our limitlessness. When you go today in the British Museum or in any of the big museums, it's not the creativity that impresses you. Yeah, that impresses you, but it is the human limitlessness. When you be there, there's a pivotal moment when you get in these museums and that hits you and you say, wow, this is what we are. I'm part of this. No matter if I'm dyslexic or not, I'm part of it. I think that's why art, the creation of art, brings us back to that together. And you see that often in arts communities. They're all coming together like a tribe, kind of. Everybody does its things, and we all help us out to be safe and live peace. And more than that, to expand our human potential and not system dynamics and not system navigation and not system maintenance. I think we have lost ourselves in systems. And I think that's why the educational level is outdated. And, people die, but systems don't die. So we keep the mistakes alive. If we can't even recognize the mistakes because humans die, even the humans that are saying, okay, this educational system doesn't work, but we keep going on because we're so busy with other systems. That's basically how I got into art.
You are from Austria.
Vienna. Yep.
And when we think of Austria and Vienna, we think of its status as an innovative arts capital. It is where European culture was predominantly focused.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of the great musical talents. We also consider even the scientific endeavors, psychotherapy, right? We have Freud.
Yeah.
So Vienna has this dual nature. It has this duality. It is known for arts and innovation and creativity. And yet, anyone who studies the education system of Austria will find that it is very rigid and factory-like, that it has this very inflexible approach to what you should do. The professors lecture, you take notes, you take a test.
Mm-hmm.
School is very regimented in that model, and yet it's a country known for its rich artistic culture. How do you reconcile your experiences in the education programs with your amazing talents as an artist?
I don't know how much, obviously everything rubs off on you. We are all adaptable. That's the thing is, when you're in a group of hooligans, you start become a hooligan. And I think our environment had something to do with it. And because it made me feel good, I listened to classical music, and it's always on the radio. And so the music got me very balanced and made me feel good. Even though I didn't like that music particularly when I was 16, I wanted to, whatever you use once, Beatles, Rolling Stones, whatever. But there was always the teeter-totter also. So you hear news and there's classical music. I think when I think back now, I think the Austria was one of the biggest. It was like a multinational empire like America is, so there was all these nationalities. Vienna, London and Paris were the hubs of the center of these huge empires. And I think this is totally energetically adjusted. So you had the creative potential of all the humans that are different coming together. And then you had also, to protect the empire, you need to have military and the regimented, and you need also, which is everywhere, I think, around the world, you needed new blood. You needed new system relevant humans, because without humans, there's no need for systems. And humans, even though they would have a harder time to function as without systems, that human could fend for themselves, because we are limitless in our creativity. And that's the other side of that. The systems developed to make people fit into systems in industry, military, whatever. And I think the Germanic is very, that's the sense is very a good sense. It's not a bad sense. They want to do it right. Like humans, I think generally every human that are not disturbed want to do it right. I think we're also benevolent. I think humans do. That's just the media telling us we hate each other. But why would we need to give soldiers drugs to fight and kill? We are good, benevolent people. And Vienna had the advantage that it was such a huge city, but it had to also, protect that system, because basically they are all systems. Paris, London, and every city, every state is a system. This is a great example where education became this, and then you condition humans to be disturbed, to have inner conflict, that in nature you're valuable because you're born, you exist, and all of a sudden the system tells you, no, you gotta be good for the system. And it was actually a very good question, because I wasn't aware of that. That just when we discourse, that's why I think discourse is so powerful.
You did not go through the system through university, correct?
I just couldn't. I had tutors, everything. I was always outside of the system, but not as a rebel. See, people go right away, this is also a system thing. You must be lazy. You must be a rebel. Oh, you don't want to work. That's not correct.
And that's a real challenge, because my understanding of, and I'm only an amateur artist, to put it very generously.
Yeah.
But to succeed and get shows, to succeed and have your music heard in the right places, to have your art hung in the right gallery, you typically have to go to the right schools. Whether it's France, Italy. I would assume it's the same in Austria as it is in Germany, where you have to go to the art university. How did you overcome that lack of the credential that traditionally opens up those doors for young creatives in our countries?
Connection, human connection. And I think human connection is also, even if you have the Royal Academy, it is all about human connection. We delude ourselves to say, if you're in Harvard, you have a degree from Harvard, you're going to get a job. And you have degrees, that doesn't mean anything that you automatically get a job, right? I mean, this is the delusions that the system, to keep the systems going, you have these delusions that you need to be this. Is it easier? Are you hurt to? I think in art, it's not so much. But in general, I'm a certified coach, and I And I've never had anybody ask me to give him the credential or whatever. I just did it. And I hardly use any of that knowledge, because I couldn't do anything with it. But I have my credential, but what did it help me? And the same thing, I have no credential in art and I'm successful, or relatively successful. And now more successful because I am the person that actually looks at art, not from and this is why I say discourse, the context. I looked at the art where 97% of artists are on the poverty level worldwide. And I said, that can't be. And I found that artists have never defined themselves. They have never defined themselves. There was a baron or a king, and they said, oh, this guy does music. He's in a carnival. Oh, why don't you live in in one of my 500 rooms? The kitchen is going to cook for you and your wife, and you play Mozart. You play for me at night, and a concert. And we have never, and on religion, Michelangelo and so on, it went on, and artists have never defined themselves as a value. They accepted the value that was given by the system, whatever system employed you. And this is over generation. And then the starving artist definition came into play. We are and most artists are completely not aware of that. And I discovered that it wasn't my idea or anything, but I thought, what we understand as art world, and that's why you asked me, you should go in a school or whatever, is basically the art business. It's about a finished product. It's not your process that actually is the magic for all people. PTSD is really there's the master value in it to bring us back to our own humanity, like it brought me back to my humanity, and not say you're a freak. Is the superpower of art. The creation is the key, and the product is secondary. What happens in the psyche of the person that loves art? It's a recognition. What he sees in art, why people pay $1 million for art, is because he recognizes himself in that piece, that he's piece of all. And what happens in art is the art is a product of your interaction of your non-physical, because you have an inspiration, and physical. It is basically a physically representation of your work with your unseen self, with your spirit, with whatever you want to call it. And when you focus on that process very much, or go really deep in it, and you're not distracted like Mozart could, like Michelangelo could, then you blow everything away. But now everybody's so distracted, and everybody thinks there's a formula in art, and there is none. There's a formula in creating art products for sale, but there's no formula in creating art. Everybody creates differently art.
And when you talk about markets and systems, in the West right now, there's a lot of complaints about our system, the capitalist system, turning it into a business, turning it into an assembly line. As you said, the art industry. What we forget is that everything is a system. Obviously, the old Soviet realism of Soviet cinema and art, it was a system you had to fit into. If you didn't fit into it, you didn't get state funding.
And you weren't an artist. You wouldn't even be called an artist. You are called an artist because any system deems you as an artist. They say, you're an artist, Scott.
Yeah, and I think that's true, in all cultures. And we need to remember this. So when we start talking about, our system is negative, we need to remember that systems in general are self-perpetuating. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter which system, they got to define the art. They got to define the art market, what was and wasn't publicly accepted. And the reason I bring that up is you have been an arts commissioner and you've been very involved with public art.
Yeah.
How to get art out there. And so when I think of public art, the first place my mind went was, quite honestly, the Soviet propaganda art, which was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing it. And the same was true throughout the Eastern Bloc. But you're not talking about that. You're talking about how can the artist define his or her own work, their own personality, their own pursuit as an artist, and still do it publicly. So could you address that issue as you write about this need for public art that is still authentic to the artist?
Authentic to an artist means you focus on that interaction that I said, you have an inspiration, you focus on that to make that as clearly as you can. Whatever clearly is, it could be a scribble, but if a scribble is the clearest thing, then you make a scribble. You gotta be authentic because it's your individuality that we are interacted with all. We are interconnected with that individuality because you're part of the whole. And that's what I found through art. I found all my knowledge and my wisdom through art. I didn't find it through a system. I found it through the art. And what I'm saying is, I know that everything is static in a system. I know that. But I think also that humans are not static. And I think that dissonance of a static to submit or adapt to a static humanity to a static system where the static becomes so dominant that we lose our superpower of human potential. There's something, I grab it and the economic system. The economic system isn't a bad system. Any system is not bad. I'm not criticizing any system. I'm saying we are not aware that these systems are outdated, and we are not aware that essentially, I think it's a misconception is that essentially a static thing cannot work with a humans that constantly changes, and change is a constant. It's not, I'm gonna, even in prison, you constantly change as a human. And this disconnect of static and non-static and economy must be always 24/7, 24/7 needs to constantly work. A human can't work. We have cycles, periods, seasons. That's what a living being has to do or has to go through those circles to stay in balance. That's why they found recently that sleep is so important. Yes, because we can only be that super limitless being when we are in balance. And system is static is not balancing. An airplane doesn't fly a straight line from here to New York. It flies constantly left, right, and you always try to balance yourself. And therein is the result of arriving there. And humans need to have that balance. And so the economy could be, but it could be an ethically economy. I say to all people to listen to this, we need to work, and we can, because we have proven 100,000 times how limitless we are. We can find a solution of an interface. We need to create an interface from the static to the non-static, to the organic, and we need to find our base of economy needs to be an ethical economy, not an economy that continuously becomes the primary, not only the common denominator, but the primary driving force for humans. And that's where we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves with the staticness of systems that we created, so we can change them. Let's change them.
How do you go about, as an artist, advocating for this change? Because, as you said, it catches me by surprise when you say 90 to 95% of artists globally live at or below poverty. And we know that 85% of adult autistics are under or unemployed, that disability and creativity almost go hand in hand in terms of how we get marginalized.
Uh-huh.
How do we advocate for this change where we aren't just pushed off and given a monthly stipend, as in some countries you get your disability check, but please go away?
Yeah.
Or you aren't participating in civic responsibility the same way as other people. How do we fight this and become more valued, not just financially, but truly valued? Because money isn't value.
Yeah, and you're absolutely great question. The value is when you create something. I can tell you one thing, for example, be aware. It's an awareness thing. It's not something we have to do or change. When you do, like you say, like kids want to always draw because they can't stand parents arguing or whatever. And the drawing brings them in time space. It brings them in the right now, here, not in a mind construct. The problem, I think, with mental disorders is that my experience, I'm not a scientist or whatever, but my experience is the moment I bring a person into time space, it doesn't matter which person, handicapped or not, the person relaxes. The person, also when you talk to somebody and you're genuinely interested in that talk, it brings you in the moment. It aligns you with that other person. That is one thing. When you're in that alignment, then you actually have access to the whole. So the whole access, and then you create. And what you recognize is when you finish from conception to the finish line, it doesn't matter abstract or representational. You create something from my self-esteem came primarily because I had an idea and I finished that idea. And I see a lot of time people are they put artists on the side and say, okay, that's just a hobby. But there's also jealousy because artists are allowed to create something from conception to the physically finish it physically. And that conception to the finish line, this finishing up things, artists are great finisher. They're not lazy. They finish up stuff. And that gives you, without giving feedback. See, when you give feedback of the product, that's not it. You had an idea, you're making a red box. And you find the red, you find the materials, and you make a red box. I can tell you 100 times you're an idiot, you can't do a box. You have experienced making a box from your thought. And that gives you more self-worth, self-acceptance, and value that values you. Because they said to me, you should, first of all, I failed in English. You should not go any writing, do anything in writing. All these things they told me. And creativity allowed me to do all these things. I didn't start with books. I started with painting. I started with music. I started with using other music to mix together. But in that process, I learned my human value, my human part of the whole. What is it me that brings it? And that's why I say human is a superpower that we need to discover. And I'm working on it. Every time I unveil what it does or what I'm telling you here, I put it in my podcast, 30 seconds. It's just a thing, just to make you think, because it's an awareness. We are not aware. It's what I say always when you go out with your kids and there's a fountain and the sun is shining and you go on the side and then all of a sudden there's a rainbow. It's all here. We just don't see each other. And we disturb our perception through systems, through stereotypes, through characterizations. I mean, the stereotypes of man and woman, that's made by systems. We are all humans. A cat doesn't ask, oh, is it a female cat? Is it a male cat? Is it a black cat or a white cat? It doesn't matter. We're all humans. And therein is the power. And the absolute power to make that humanity work is balance. And we need everybody. We need the autistic children, the PhDs. We need everyone because we can learn from that and it can enrich us. And that's you learn through art projects. Go in any artist community. And another proof is go to any art opening. There is poor, rich, every gender, every sexuality, Republicans, Democrats, and they all mingle. They don't even talk about business at that art opening. And the funniest thing is nobody looks at the art, but because it's in all of us, that's the magic that we experience, or in a concert that all people sing the same songs. That's the magic of the whole. And this priceless. No system can value that.
You are in Southern California.
Yeah.
And I went to college at USC in Los Angeles. And I spent countless hours at the Getty,
Yep.
at the Museum of Modern Art, at what eventually became the Geffen Collection. Most major cities are like that. There's art available for either low cost or no cost.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're a student, you can get student ID passes. And it saddens me to say that I would go to the Getty and sit in a gallery, and I would often be the only person for an hour or two. And it's so hard to understand how we have these things and they're not filled with people just enjoying the experience. How do we get people to understand that just sitting in a gallery and looking or just going to a concert, that these are things that enrich us and make us better people?
That's what I do. That's my life mission. I tell you what art is outside the systems for humanity. What the superpower of art does for humans that is inherent in every human, and the nurturing of that inherent superpower is by looking at art, supporting art, but not only the project, but also the making of it. It's not just the product. See, the misunderstanding is, oh, that's the product. A lot of people, they're CEOs, they work 60 hours a week. What do they do on the weekends? They garden, they tinker, they create. They tinker on their car, hot rod, They don't touch anything dirty 60 hours. Then they come home and they get dirty. They get tactile with their hands in something. And we need to just educate people. That's why I do what I do. And I don't have any support because I'm not the system. But I think I have very strong points, and which are, you just need to read you just listen to my 20-second podcast, The Smart of Art. You need to just see that and see, and that I'm pointing only values out, not who is Basquiat, who is Warhol, how much money. That's completely irrelevant. Those are products like a bicycle. What does it mean when I'm looking at a product? What does it do it in me? It connects me with that creativity. It makes me resonate with that process that Warhol did to create that. And that's the touching thing. And you can be also not indifferent. You can be indifferent to art, and that's not a wrong thing. You mentioned the Getty. The Getty Villa is beautiful, but I can totally understand, because when I was young, really young, all what counted for me in visual arts was Warhol, was Picasso, wasn't even Giacometti or anybody else. It was just the pop art that on my aesthetic level, because I think aesthetics is also a level, I wrote in this in my book, that you learn. You start with Mickey Mouse and you start with your dolls, and you go up, and then you all of a sudden you like the Beatles, and then all of a sudden you like jazz, and then you like classical music. It is an aesthetic that is a growing muscle too. And if are not exposed to aesthetics, you can't see it. You can't appreciate it. You can appreciate it, but not consciously. So that's why I'm saying, if I consciously tell you what art is outside of a system, I can guarantee that you double your experience with art, either from the seeing point as well from the experiencing point of creating.
I can really enjoy looking at the Dutch masters, the greats of Italy, and at the same time, the Museum of Modern Art. I'm astounded by what I see. There's this misunderstanding of modern art, pop art, contemporary art, where people look at it and say, well, that's nothing. Because they don't understand that many of these artists, you mentioned Picasso. Picasso could do realism. He could do astounding sketches. And when you see them, and they are so almost photographic in quality, his early studies, it isn't that modern art is some sort of strange lack of skill. In fact, those artists trained throughout the classics. They recreated the classics, they studied them, they mastered them. But what they wanted to do is express something beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you had a camera, why would you want to paint what a camera could do?
Exactly.
And so when I look at your art is heavily influenced by, as you said, it looks like the 1960s and 70s, the pop movement. I'm trying to think of how I would describe it. You use a lot of primary colors, a lot of rich colors. I see a high contrast, pink with blue, very primary yellow, green, blue, black on red. What influenced you, and how did you come to this place as an artist where you were doing quite a bit of expressionist pop art?
I love, and perhaps that's, I mean, since you asked me the question, it's great. See, that's why I like the dialogue. It could be because the contrast in my life. I love contrast. I love very harsh contrast. I'm not afraid. And because I was conditioned to survive contrast, not fitting in systems. And I think it subconsciously drove me to enjoy contrast on a not as dangerous as with systems, to express that and make that better. And I think that helped me. And this comes all, by the way, right now in our conversation. This is not something I thought about. So this kind of made me make the contrast that I was faced with my whole life palatable. I said, how can be contrast palatable for me? So enjoyable, this was just an expression of my essence that said harsh colors, because the system, it wasn't like, oh, you could fit in, but not here. It was, you couldn't fit in. And this hard, and how can this hard thing be joyous, happy? And then I saw obviously patterning that, like Warhol or the pop artists, and I wasn't even aware. I'm very similar. I have a lot of similarities with Alexander Calder, and I didn't even know about him till I was like 30 or something. 30. I have a lot of energy, as you can tell. And that energy manifests in strong color, not in mute colors. But I love also, which came through my experience as an artist, muted colors, I think, could be very strong. Muted colors, if they are correctly adjusted, almost like food that is not very tasty. It's very easy to make. And this is all, we talk, by the way, we're talking about the same range of everything. So food you can make very easily, just put in sugar, salt, and hot. And it is powerful, punchy food. But you could also make like mozzarella cheese with a little basil and a tomato. These are all not strong. That's not a dry tomato. It's a soft, and you can, these fennel, you put those things together and they are powerful. I mean, that the combination of that is blowing. I mean, I went to, there was a pizza place here and they did a cheese pizza, very thin pizza with fennel and thing. And there was not a harsh dough or anything. Everything was so thin, but it was godly. I mean, it literally was transforming the experience to eat that. And I think I like, color is my medium. Color is a thing. I'm also playing percussion, which is color too. It's wonderful. Life is wonderful. I mean, it just, especially when you talk about it from a human potential level, what we're doing right now.
You spread the word through working with organizations as an advisor, plus your books.
Yeah.
You focus on something called the self-aware artist movement. And we talked about that. The artist previously was almost an employee, work for hire.
Exactly.
Okay, Michelangelo, here's your next commission from the church.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you didn't have the church commissions, you starved. And then it was the royal commissions, or you starved. Now it's selling to upper middle class business people, or you starve.
Yep. Yeah.
So we have always been defined by that system, whether it was theological, whether it was feudal, whether it was a market economy that has emerged. So how do you become self-aware as an artist? You talk about the essence of art and becoming self-aware, and this is something you've worked on now for almost a decade.
Yeah. I got a grant for art education, of alternative art education, because I think also systems see already the art education that we do now is basically rehashing history and not what actually art does to the human race. that was intuitive. I wasn't yet defining art as seeing art outside the systems as a human superpower. I was seeing, because I talked to so many artists my whole life, and none of the artists could explain to me why he gave a title, why he gave that title, why he makes an untitled painting. And there were these shticks that said, "Oh, I don't title my painting because it's in the eyes of the beholder." Art is a language, and that's here for communication. And if you want to communicate something, and if your painting is about untitled, absolutely call it untitled. But don't out yourself if you have an extra tool to put a word to it, and it doesn't need to even be connected. It can bring out the opposite of that, but a title is a powerful part of art that has tremendous influence, and also it can align you with the viewer. It can align you. It can bring out so much. It's a catalyst. And so many artists for a long time did say, "Oh, it's untitled." It's like, "Oh, no." I said, "You don't know what you are. You're not aware what you're doing." And I was kind of saying this very aggressively, but obviously now I know, because we have never defined ourselves. How could they? And so I started in 2015, 14 or 15, I started the self-aware art movements, and I've 100 graduates, and they were all transformed their life, because I asked the question, why are you doing what you're doing, and can you verbalize so I can understand it? Because it's about bringing the unseen, not just, and bring it into the physical. So what I, for example, discovered during this thing, that women especially like to do cloudy paintings. Cloudy, like always, it's kind of taking a little soft colors or harder colors and kind of steering around. And I found that this was a ritual that was instinctive in humans, because I said, keep doing, but don't finish. And a lot of women said, "Oh, that looks like something." If you're women artists, but men do it too. I just saw it more openly through a woman, where women then stop and sell the painting. And I said, keep painting and don't put it on a canvas, put it on paper and just keep thinking. You will see something, because I saw that through myself. All of a sudden that pops, and that is just opening your unconsciousness, getting in the moment, aligned to the whole. And all of a sudden you see the most fantastic work. And the people that do cloudy things, the longest have the greatest stuff coming out. So when I see somebody doing that, I said, you have way more in you than you think. You need to not stop. You need to keep going on, because it will reveal itself. Almost like when you do a process with psychology, you do a word association or whatever, and all of a sudden, I hate you. This is one way to access your center, to bring your imbalance enough that you can be you. And that's what I think so great about art, to be you, to see it yourself and not be dependent on others. See, we are dependent on others, what they give us feedback, if we demand it or not, or they just offer it. But in art, you see your own feedback. And when I can get you through a process, when I can say, keep doing that. I'm not having steps or anything. I just keep doing that. And in that doing, something reveals itself, like it revealed in art as a human superpower, reveals itself every day more. It reveals itself in this talk, because somebody hasn't asked me that question like you did. And then I have your mastermind with it, right? So our brains are interacting and changing each other, if we want or not. That's scientifically proven. So that's why I say dialogue is a superpower of revelation of our human potential.
I want to loop all the way back to where we began. I don't believe, and this is just from personal experience, we stop being neurodiverse. I don't stop being autistic. I don't stop being hyperactive, right? My attention deficit does not magically go away.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we learn to compensate, we learn to adjust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you are still, in some ways, dealing with your dyslexia, whether it's money, maybe it's reading a long piece of work. How have you adjusted now? We are both in our 50s.
60.
The audience needs to know we are not young. We have had the benefit of years of experience to adjust. So, how have you learned to adjust, and how might we mentor that for some other people listening and parents and educators listening? How did you adjust, and how did you become a success and embrace dyslexia as part of your identity?
Mm-hmm. And you heard it in this interview. I couldn't find words, and it happens. I think my journey to success, what actually was my little backpack, is that I was always trying to find my core. When we have a disability, and this is what I said at the beginning, I said the hardest thing is the self-shaming. It's not that somebody tells you you're an idiot. You're the whatever, the town idiot. You can't read, you can't do anything. Just forget it. We're gonna support you, throw you something. All these things that you said. I think we are born with a drive to connect, right? We are a herd animal. And when the herd says you're bad and pushes you out, it goes by your drive of connecting. It's the same as a static and non-static. Is the same. It's way harder when another human. What is the worst thing that you ignored or that you ignore? What is look, the herd animal, she comes. It is the connection that is, and when you disconnect through systems, that's what's so hard. That is the hardest thing. While we are not healing, I think we could all heal with a little bit, not as good, but and every human is different. Like the eagle sees sharper than humans see. Are we the best? No, we are not the best. And everybody is good in something. And that's why in the whole, we are powerful. In the whole, we can expand our human potential. We can solve any problem. But when we want everybody to be normal and we can't find the normal, like you said, that this is very frustrating. And then we shame ourselves and said, we are not able. Humanity is not able. We cannot heal ourselves. We are too stupid. And that too stupid for handicapped people becomes us because we're all interconnected. We are not. We can handle anything. If I can go through this and you can go through this, and we didn't kill ourselves yet. And I'm not saying that is a given because I might as well killed myself. I'm glad that my spirit didn't allow it to me and gave me enough sunshine that I can still bloom. But a lot of people don't get that sunshine, and they get that taken away by saying you're not right, you're not okay. Even though nobody is normal, nobody is perfect. Perfection only works in the systems and not in humanity. Our mistakes are guidelines to our success. My disability is a guideline to success. I feel healthier than I've ever felt and was born, I think. And not because I had, systems and other humans see, I didn't have a theory. I've been in the moment and deal with the moment. Right now, I have to finish this stuff with you. I have to, have that conversation with you. I'm not thinking, do I have to do something for the system in 5 minutes? What is my wife doing? What is this doing? What is that? I'm not thinking that. You are as good as now. This is our moment. In a minute, we can both die. It doesn't matter. This is the moment we need to focus. And I think that's why we have so many neurodiversity issue, because it's communication. What are nerves? What are nerves? Nerves are communication. And what we're doing is separating people. And I think a lot, and basically our bodies show us we don't want to be separated. That doesn't mean we have to hug anybody, but we have to realize we are all a part of one. And that's where it is in our power. And the absolute power, what we can do is balance that. For example, you making this podcast, I'm talking to you. I'm finding out the stuff. And then two people that work on total separate things all of a sudden connect. And people, I hope they see this in this conversation, how powerful we are. And it doesn't matter if you have a title or I have a title or whatever, or how system relevant we are. It just happens. This is a proof of how powerful we are. This conversation.
And by definition, titles are just another form of label.
Exactly.
And labels are often our problem. We only see the label and not the person.
Yeah. We are system adapt and not, that adaptability is our downfall because we all try to get system adapt because we need to survive in a functioning humanity. There should never be anybody hungry or have not shelter. We produce 3 times as much food as we can use, and 25,000 humans die a day of hunger. How can that be? Where is that wrong? What is not going? Half of the workforce works for $5.50, has to live for $5.50 a day in the world. We always need to look in the world, but we have to act locally. We have to look at us as a whole in the world, but also say we have to act locally because world solutions are very hard to. And then you get the statistics like that because it's very hard to do solutions on a big basis. It's like the individual has to do the best that they can, like you and I, and then connect and promote each other and help each other, and other people see this, they connect to us, and that's what it all is, and that's what nerves are. That's what art is. That's it's the connection of together.
I really want to thank Michaell Magrutsche for joining us on the Autistic Me podcast. If you'd like to know more about his thoughts, you can listen to The Smart of Art. That is your podcast. It is also the title of your latest book.
Yeah.
You also have books that are collections of micro art. I don't know how you would explain micro paintings.
Micro paintings I did a project where a challenge because I wanted to find out how creativity works on the human. And I did 300 paintings in 3 days. And actually, this is a great book. It's called Imagination. It's actually a great book because that book, and I think you can just get the Kindle version because you can look at it and you can stretch it and look into it. And they're great titles. And I made that also for people with neurodiversity, so that they can, autistic people or PTSD or older people, retired people that move into dementia or whatever, to experience. And so actually to get them out of the system thinking, because they're all abstract, and they get you out of the system thinking, because when you look at art, it always puts you out of the system into the humanity. Because you're looking at something and you can't judge it, you can't categorize it, you can't label it, right? And so you have to feel it. You have to feel your whole body, not just your brain, but your body and your whole sensory perception. And we have a lot of them. You can see that and experience that. And wisdom is an experience. It's not a knowledge. Knowledge is very limited and short. But I want to draw you into that humanity more. And that's why I called it imagination. And I said in the back that, that I thought that you run out of imagination. And that's why I say also limitlessness, because I thought the worst, and it confirms what I told you about the clouds. The more you create, more creative your stuff will get. So the more you create, even in short times, like 3 days, 300 paintings, I was expecting that I have no more imagination in color combinations and even abstract forms that come out of me. And I was fascinating that even more came out of me, that bringing me in time and space to focus on 300 paintings got me to to hook into humanity, into creativity, into that creative force, or whatever, your matrix or universe or God or whatever. And it plugged me in. And all of a sudden that whole thing came out like a geyser. Mm-hmm.
I really do appreciate this hour we've had together. I've learned a lot. It's been a wonderful journey. If people are interested, Michaell Magrutsche, the website, one thing to tell them, it's Michaell, Michaell.
Yeah.
And then just M for Magrutsche.com.
Michaell M, Michaell with 2 L's.com. MichaellM.com, Michaell with 2 L's.
And that will take you to everything.
Everything. One very simple.
This has been an excellent adventure in neurodiversity. I thank you, Michaell, for joining the Autistic Me podcast.
Thank you, Scott, so much for that space, because without, we couldn't have created this.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Perspectives on Neurodiversity. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, and please leave a review if you found the discussion useful. Don't forget to read the Autistic Me blog and follow my posts on social media. Look for Autistic Me as one word on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Links to the Autistic Me on social media are included in the show notes. I am Christopher Scott Wyatt, speaking as the Autistic Me. Thank you for listening.